Hey, what's up guys? This is Seth from Dark Waters Fly Shop. This is going to be one of 5 videos roughly. I'm not sure exactly how many they're going to be, but we're in the cabin fever zone right now. I just got the fly shop set up. I got a number of things that we're really just jonesing to get out and fish right now here in the UP, but it's been so cold. Everything's locked up, hard water everywhere. But what I'm going to do in this episode of the next 5 is I'm going to break down for you the loadout that we're going to use when we go steelhead fishing this spring. The other few episodes that we're going to do is probably going to be for trout opener last Saturday in April. I'll get ready for my North Dakota trip, fly fishing for pike, muskies, smallmouth, mousing for browns. We're going to go ahead and do an episode on each loadout that we're going to use for each species of fish we're going to target this spring, starting with steelhead. All right, so before I talk about gear, let's first talk about apparel. When we go out and we're fishing steelhead here in the UP, whether it's up on Lake Superior or over on Lake Michigan, sometimes you're fishing in single digits, you're in the teens, and then some days you can get all the way up into the 60s depending on the weather during our spring. So when I choose the clothing that I'm going to wear, it's really going to fluctuate depending on the weather. Obviously, you're going to want to look at the forecast and see what you're going to be fishing in when you're there, but you're also going to want the ability to fish comfortably in a number of different temperatures. The best way that I've found to dress is to use what we call wicking layers. Some of you are familiar with that, merino wool. And what I love most about my layering process is the base layer has to be a wicking layer. Typically what happens when guys want to layer up to go fishing, I find, is they just think that the more layers they use, the warmer they're going to be. And that is absolutely not true. You have to use layers that aren't going to constrict your circulation, but are also going to insulate and wick away moisture from your skin so that it keeps that moisture from staying on your skin, getting cold, and then causing you to become so uncomfortable that you have to go inside. So the way that I manage my layers is I start with a wicking layer. I suggest dual-fold heavy thermals for the pants, merino wool socks, maybe another pair of like Carhartt socks over the top of those. I use those in wool socks and they work really well. For my top base layer, I use a medium weight long sleeve dual-fold thermal. I'll use another layer over the top of that, maybe a hoodie. But essentially what happens is you have a wicking layer, you have an absorbing layer, and then you have a barrier layer from like water or wind, which would consist of your waders or a waterproof or windproof jacket on your outer shell. So I start with the dual-fold thermals, wool socks. I then go to a pair of sweatpants or fleece. Both of those will absorb the moisture away from that wicking layer, but also keep it from hitting the outer shell of your waders, which is going to be cold. When that warm temperature hits the cold temperature, you get condensation. That condensation will make you damp. You'll get cold. You'll have to go in. So you got the wicking layer, the absorbing layer, and then the outer shell. I do that for my bottom and my top layers. Dual-fold thermal, hoodie, thick jacket, rain jacket, shell, windbreaker, whatever you're going to do. That's how I layer my clothing. All right, next we're going to go ahead and talk about the packs that I use. I'll fluctuate between a backpack, a chest pack, a sling pack, or a vest. And it really depends on the trip that I'm going to go on. Now, what determines the size of the pack that I choose is the length or the distance from my car that I'm fishing. So there's sometimes, and there's some superior tributaries that we fish where we've got to hike a long ways to get back into them. They're extremely remote places and they're gorgeous. Lake Michigan fishing, the tributaries for steelhead is usually faster paced, bigger fish, more numbers, but the Lake Superior tributaries make up for the size and number of fish easily in the scenery that you find yourself in. Typically when I wind up hiking, I'm going to end up using a backpack for 2 reasons. One, because I'm going to have more to bring, water and a lunch probably, but the other reason is because when I'm hoofing it through the woods to get to this spot, I may shed a layer or 2 and I can still keep it in my backpack. Conversely, when I'm fishing some of these places that are going to be closer to my car, I will fish the chest pack because I can get right out, throw that on. I don't have to carry a lot with me and I can get right in the water and fish. If I need my lunch, if I need to go back and shed a layer, if it gets warmer, I can easily just walk back to the car and tuck it away. All right, now let's talk gear. Let's go ahead and start with the rod. The rod that I use when I do my steelhead fishing is typically a 10-foot 7-weight. I use the Risen rod. It's an ITB series. Great rod, lifetime warranty, extremely affordable. And the reason why I like that 10-foot 7-weight is because it's going to give me the reach that I need when I'm nymphing these long runs. Some of the smaller tributaries, I may use my 8-weight. It's a 9-foot 8-weight. I'll use that just because when I'm walking a long distance, sometimes it's a little bit lighter. I don't have to manage that 10-foot length. But when I'm fishing a bigger river in big runs, I absolutely want the 10-foot 7-weight for the length that I get, especially making men's to try to get that drag-free drift. So that is the rod that I choose. You can go ahead and choose any 10-foot 7-weight that you like. That's just the one that I prefer. As far as the reel's concerned, one of my favorite reels is the Risen Fly, the Ichthus. I love that because you can slap that line back in if you've got a pick line up once you hook a fish. It's got a large arbor reel, but it is a really wide reel so that you can fit a ton of backing in there. And you guys know, if you're steelhead fishermen, that sometimes those things are making seriously long runs. And I've got, hundreds of yards of backing on this thing, and it works great. All right, now for what I'm bringing with me on the trip. I like to pack light, but I still like to have everything that I'm gonna need for the trip. And sometimes that can get me in trouble if I try to pack too light. But this is what I got going on. First thing that you're gonna need is you're gonna need your leader material. This is on an Orvis spool, but this is not Orvis. I just replaced the line here. This says 5X and 2X, but this is not the case. What I have on one of these spools is 40-pound monofilament. And what I have on this other spool is 12-pound fluorocarbon. I'm going to show you how I rig that in just a little bit, but I do bring 40-pound mono and 12-pound fluorocarbon on 2 separate spools. The other thing I'm going to bring are my stonefly patterns and my egg patterns. It's also going to be in a fly box. I'm going to need my nippers, and this is pretty standard. You're going to use this anytime you go on a fishing trip. You're going to need those, along with a hemostat to remove the hook from the fish. Those are both on zingers to make them easily accessible. Another thing that some guys don't carry, but I recommend, especially steelhead fishing, is going to be a thermostat. Not a thermostat. What is this thing? This is it's a temperature gauge. Thermometer. That's what this thing's called. Oh my gosh. That's crazy. This is a thermometer. A lot of guys don't like to bring these, or they don't know to bring these. When you're checking water temperatures, you're going to be able to tell how active the fish are based on the temperature of the water. If you start getting like below 40 degrees, those fish are going to be moving really slow, hard day. You start breaking 50 degrees and they're steelhead in the river, they might actually start chasing some streamers and stuff too. So very key thing to have on you. I also bring these. These are leader wallets. If I am going to swing a streamer, these carry my leaders inside here, and they divide everything out so that I can have leaders, and then also like my tippet materials and stuff that I will pre-spool before I go, because I want to be able to maximize my time fishing. And so I'll prepare leaders beforehand, so if I break off or something happens, I can switch that thing up and save as much time on the water as I can possibly have. Next thing we're going to take are split shots. These are going to vary in size depending on the current, so I suggest bringing a couple different sizes split shots with you. These are very small. The ones that I have on the rig I'm going to show you are very small as well, but I do bring bigger split shots with me because sometimes when that current's moving super fast, you're really high water, you need to get those egg patterns and those stoneflies down as fast as you can. These are key, and so make sure you got enough of those as well. All right, last but not least, you need a strike indicator if you're going to be fishing the way we do here in the UP. Some guys like to tight line it. We like to get straight to business, and so we're regulating the drift that we have by a strike indicator. These are thingamabobs. I carry them here in the fly shop. You can go ahead and check us out and get whatever you need as far as any of those supplies go. Let's get to the rigging. All right, so rigging. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take about 5 feet of that 40-pound monofilament. That's going to go first. We're going to tie a perfection loop in that, and I have one rigged up for you already right here. So this is going to connect via a perfection loop to our fly line, and what's going to happen is I take about 5 feet of that, and I'm going to come down, and I'm going to put that via an Albright knot straight to my fluorocarbon. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see that with the GoPro, but I do an Albright knot straight to the fluorocarbon. I do about 5 more feet, maybe 6 more feet of this fluorocarbon, depending on the speed of the water and the depth at which I'm fishing. That's going to have to vary. But what happens is that fluorocarbon is connected to the monofilament via an Albright knot. I used to use a uni knot, but I found that the uni knot from the fluorocarbon to the mono the fluorocarbon will cut through the monofilament. So that Albright knot became very important to me. What happens then is as I go down about every 6 inches, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw a split shot on top of that fluorocarbon. until I get down to my preferred depth. And then what's gonna take place is I'm gonna get down to my first pattern, which is typically an egg pattern. That egg pattern is connected via a Palomar knot. That Palomar knot, then I use the tag end and I come all the way down to the stonefly pattern, and I'm using an improved clinch knot for my stonefly. What will happen then is after I connect all that together, the strike indicator thingamabob goes right onto the monofilament, set at an appropriate depth, and you're ready to fish. Oh, one last thing. I forgot my net. This is the net that I'm using right here for my steelhead fishing trips. I'm taking this out, and it's gonna be big enough to hold those fish that I catch. You're definitely not gonna do it with a trout net. Depending where you're fishing, that net may or not be big enough. For the most part, it usually is. I think I've landed like, 15-pound steelhead using that same net. It's deep enough, it's big enough, but your trout net's definitely not gonna be able to do that, so you wanna make sure that you have a net. Again, and I suggest the rubber netting via rope netting. That rope netting is really gonna be harmful to the fish. You wanna get a safe release on those fish for you. Go ahead and subscribe. I'm gonna go ahead and put a couple more videos together for you guys on the other gear loadouts that we use when we're going for other fish. So make sure you stay tuned, and thanks for watching.